Dude, spatial audio slash Dolby Atmos music is cool now. F***ing A, right? So you may or may not have seen this video that I did a while ago where I went over the spatial audio slash Dolby Atmos tracks that Apple Music offered way back in the summer of 2021. That's when Dolby Atmos music slash spatial audio music was first introduced to the masses, and it was very noticeable very quickly that it sounded like crap. What it seemed like is that Apple Music was keeping this under wraps until they, divulged it through the grapevine somehow to several music studios of top artists. And they were like, hey, we're introducing Dolby Atmos music on our platform, so how about you give us some Dolby Atmos tracks? So then all the studios were scrambling and they're like, oh God, let's upmix to Dolby Atmos, even though it's not really properly mixed in an immersive audio format. And lo and behold, everything sounded terrible because it seemed like it was totally rushed. Not a lot of thought was put into it. They just wanted to get some Dolby Atmos tracks out there just to get out there. So yeah, I was not impressed at all back in the summer of 2021. Fast forward a couple summers to the summer of 2023 that just ended. And some of you may have seen this video where I reviewed Short Street, an immersive audio album done by Mako Marquardt with his band A Bad Think. And in that review, I told you how amazing it sounded, where lead vocals were placed, harmony vocals were coming out as surrounds, drums took up the entire front sound stage, strings were relegated to the surround backs and only the surround backs, reverbs and moving synthesizer effects were relegated to the height channels. So yeah, I was blown away. I was like, oh, okay, this is what Dolby Atmos music should sound like. None of this taking a stereo track and quickly upmixing it to Dolby Atmos. No, this was carefully mixed and mastered in Dolby Atmos and it sounded great. So then I thought, well, since I follow a lot of Instagram accounts of various, music studios and whatnot, and a lot of them are doing Dolby Atmos nowadays, let's revisit Apple Music's curated made for spatial audio playlist. Because as you can see at the bottom of the playlist, it also has Dolby Atmos written there. So my curiosity got the best of me and I just had to know, okay, it's been 2 years. That's a long time for things to get better. Has it gotten better? Do the vocals still sound like they're super distant and far away? Do rock songs actually rock and not just sound flat or just off because they're supposed to be surrounding me? Do rap and hip hop tracks translate to Dolby Atmos now? Well, in order to research this particular topic, I just went into my theater, fired up Apple Music on my Apple TV 4K, and just went through that curated spatial audio playlist. All right, so obviously I can't go into the level of detail that I did with the Short Street review, because one reason why the Short Street review that I just did was super cool was that they whitelisted the video link of my review so that I could have the music itself playing during the video so that I could pick out various moments that I thought were really cool and I wouldn't get a copyright strike from YouTube. But obviously, since I don't have the permission of all these songs that are in this curated list on Apple Music, I'll just kind of quickly go over what I heard and hopefully it'll entice you to do the same. All right, so let's get into it. Okay, first on the list is Taylor Swift's Wildest Dreams, Taylor's version. I will have to say that this one was okay. The mix wasn't as I was expecting. Her vocals were mainly coming out of the left and right speakers, not the center channel. I got up and I put my ear near the tweeter of pretty much every speaker just to see what was coming out of what speaker. And yeah, front, left, and right, her vocals were coming through. Center was basically like this real low synth, like this kind of dirty synth, real bassy synth, which is kind of weird, honestly. And her lead vocals came out of the surrounds a little bit, but then once the chorus hit and it got a little bit wider, backup vocals were coming in, then it was way more apparent that the backup vocals were now prominently coming out of the surrounds. There was a little bit going on in the surround backs, but not a lot. Just kind of some various parts of the arrangement and instruments. And again, just a tiny bit of vocals coming out of surround backs too. But during the bridge of the song, where most of the arrangement cuts out and it's just Taylor's voice with like a little bit of percussion, and she's singing an octave lower than the rest of the song. Red lips and rosy cheeks. That part. That was really cool because the vocals were traveling all around. It was in this speaker and then over here and then kind of above and then kind of over here. Yeah. So the vocals are moving around. It was really cool. But if I had to give it a score, I'd probably give it like a B- because yeah, it is surrounding, it is immersive, but it's not the mix that I expected it would be. Honestly, it kind of sounds like it may have been just put through a Dolby Atmos up mixer instead of like separately mixing an Atmos version. I could be wrong, but that's what it sounded like. So it wasn't the best. That's why I'm giving it a B- because it was still pretty cool, still pretty immersive. The traveling vocals during the bridge is awesome. But again, it was okay. Next on the list is September by Earth, Wind & Fire. Oh man, this one was cool. This one sounded like it was properly mixed in Dolby Atmos. A lot of the kind of funky plucking guitars were coming out of the surrounds. The brass section with all the horns and stuff, though, that was primarily coming out of the surround backs. Lead vocals were coming out of the center channel along with like a reverb of the lead vocals coming out of the front, left, and right. Percussion kind of seemed like it was all around me, which is really cool. There was like a cowbell even like over here, the right side a little bit, kind of behind me. So the fact that I could hear the main lead vocals in the center and then like more reflections of the lead vocals in the left and right kind of gave it this live quality as if I was hearing it in like some sort of arena or something. So to be honest, it was kind of a little bit too reverby for me. It made the vocals sound a little bit more distant than I wanted, because when I put my ear to the center channel and heard the lead vocals just straight on, I mean, they were buttery, they were rich, they were coming out real nice. So the fact that they added some of the vocal reverb into the left and right, I could have done without that. But overall, I would give this one an A. Because it's Earth, Wind, & Fire. I mean, there's so many members of the band, so many instruments playing simultaneously. So they have all this room to put all those instruments. So like, yeah, it was really cool. It was especially cool hearing the brass section just behind me. I mean, it's literally like I was immersed. The entire band was like surrounding me playing their song. So it was really cool. A. Next on the list, I'm Yours by Jason Mraz. Honestly, I was a little confused why this was on the list because I know this song in particular is kind of a very intimate song, very minimal arrangement, and honestly, that's exactly what it turned out to be. Lead vocals were coming out of the center channel, and it sounded like it was just the lead vocals. And then whenever the harmony vocals came in, those were relegated to the front, left, and right. Bass, guitar, and drums, those were all in the front soundstage. But what was relegated to the surrounds and the surround backs was very, very quiet harmony vocals. And that's about it. So from the start, I could tell that it was mainly just the front soundstage. And I was expecting when the rest of the band joined in or harmony vocals joined in that I would primarily hear those out of the surrounds a lot louder. But it never happened. So I think I would give this one like a C-. New Dance by XG New DNA. My apologies, I've never heard of them before, but the mix sounded cool. There was some real good bass extension going on, real good bass pumping. Although I was a little confused that not a lot was coming out of the center channel. It was primarily the lead vocals were coming out of the front, left, and right, along with some backup vocals from time to time. It just seemed like most of the arrangement was coming out of the front, left, and right speakers. When I had my ear next to the tweeter in the center channel, I kept getting some subtle things every once in a while, but it's still pretty quiet. So an interesting choice there. But the surrounds and surround backs are primarily relegated for a lot of vocal accents and shouts like, hey, woo! So those were coming out real loud out of the surrounds and the surround backs. So that was cool having all those voices surrounding me like that. Some of the instruments also came out of the surrounds and surround backs from time to time, but they're also pretty quiet, very turned down compared to the rest of the mix. So yeah, I would honestly give this one a B because the groove, the feel of it, the pace, just the overall immersion sounded really cool just sitting here in the center and having it all surround me like that. But just interesting that the center channel didn't have much going on. I probably would have liked it more if some of the instruments came through louder or more prominent in the mix in the surrounds and surround backs. But again, it was really cool hearing all those voices kind of dance around me. So yeah, I give this one a B. Next up, I Can Feel It by Kane Brown. This is a country song, and when I first reviewed Dolby Atmos music back in 2021, some of the country songs actually sounded really good because you've got like just a little bit more separation with the arrangement and the instruments. Because even back then, the more acoustic arrangements translated much better to Dolby Atmos and just being immersed with audio. But as far as this arrangement, it's definitely got a rock arrangement. Pretty heavy distorted guitars, but it still has that country feel, that country groove. Lead vocals primarily coming out of the center, but also coming out of the front, left, and right. I'm not sure why I'm still surprised that this keeps happening, but normally the lead vocals should only be coming out of the center channel, but a lot of these have the vocals coming out of the entire front soundstage. Still sounds good. Harmony vocals and guitars, those were coming out of the surrounds. Whenever the chorus hit, vocals were kind of everywhere. Surrounds, surround backs, front, left, and right, center. So it was kind of giving me that all channel stereo vibe instead of like Dolby Atmos where everything kind of has its own place and better channel separation. So it honestly makes me wonder if maybe this one was just kind of up mixed to Dolby Atmos and not like properly, carefully mixed in that fashion. I could be wrong, but it kind of gave me that vibe. But it still sounded pretty cool. It definitely surrounded me on all sides. So I would have to give it a B. Next up is Long Journey by Rod Wave. I mean, obviously this was kind of hip hop oriented. I mean, he can sing, but the beat was kind of like a trap beat almost. Bass extension, holy cow, that's a subwoofer workout for sure. So that low sub bass extension was awesome. But I honestly didn't hear anything coming out of the center channel. Vocals were just coming out of the front, left, and right as if it were a stereo song. Everything else in the arrangement was coming primarily out of the front, left, and right. It wasn't until the chorus that some backup vocals were coming out of the surrounds. Barely out of the surround backs, but primarily out of the surrounds. So it's as if it was mixed as a stereo track with harmonies coming out of the surrounds during the chorus. So this is another one that may have been just up mixed, but regardless, songs like this still sound better than they did in 2021. So as far as just a straight Dolby Atmos mix review, I would honestly give this one a D. It's mainly just a stereo track. I mean, I liked the song. The song was great, but it wasn't very immersive. Wake Me Up Before You Go by WHAM. First off, I know this is just how it was recorded back in the day, but there's a lot of reverb and delay on his lead vocals. But again, that's not this mix, that's just how it was recorded. But speaking of those lead vocals, they were in every speaker, primarily coming out of the center in the front, left, and right, but also to some degree coming out of the surrounds and the surround backs. So yeah, I did get that kind of all channel stereo vibe, but that organ sounded cool coming out of the front soundstage. To a certain degree, there were some instruments coming out of the surrounds. Surround backs were primarily just the lead vocals copied and then just put back there, I guess. Harmonies and backup vocals were coming out of the surrounds mostly, so that was cool. But coming out of the center channel, it was just the vocals and sometimes the harmonies as well. But putting my ear right next to it, I didn't hear anything else. No organ, no drums or anything. So it sounds big because George Michael's vocals have a lot of reverb trail and delay on them. But as far as just like a pure channel separated mix, I would have to give it a C. Sounded pretty cool. Things were definitely surrounding me, but it was okay. Heart Attack Rock Version by Demi Levato. This was pretty cool. Again, not much coming out of the center channel. Maybe that's an Apple Music thing? I don't know. But yeah, when I had my ear next to the center channel, it was like this really kind of gritty synth that just kept coming through, but it almost sounded like it wasn't supposed to be there, like it was a glitch. One very cool thing though is that the drum kit spanned not the surround backs, basically 180 degrees was the drum kit instead of just being in the front soundstage. So that was cool. Backup vocals were coming out of the surround backs, some of the strings that came in, a little bit of the guitars were coming out of the surround backs. But yeah, lots of backup vocals, guitars coming out of the surrounds, lead vocals coming out of the front, left, and right. But yeah, again, not much coming out of the center. I don't get it. If you have a center channel, put the vocals in there. But that was one really cool thing about reviewing Short Street by Michael Marquardt is that the lead vocals always came out of the center channel. So that left room for drums and organ and guitars and all this other stuff to come out of the front, left, and right. And then harmonies coming out of the surrounds, and then accent instruments coming out of the surrounds and surround backs, strings out of the surround backs. So when you don't utilize the center channel when it's a Dolby Atmos mix, it's confusing to me. But it still sounded cool. It's a real hard rock song. It had a very good tempo. The groove made me want to go outside and punch dance or something. But yeah, for a Dolby Atmos mix, it was okay. I would give this one a C+. Next up is Get Lucky by Daft Punk, Pharrell Williams, and Nile Rodgers. I didn't expect anything less from Daft Punk, but to surround me in immersive audio. And that's exactly what happened. That constant little guitar lick that's going on, that was coming out of the center channel, but also the front, left, and right. Vocals were coming out of the center channel primarily, but also out of the front, left, and right. Doubling vocals and harmony vocals came out of the surrounds, especially during the chorus. The surround backs were mainly for just added presence. So there was a little bit of the vocals, but they sounded pretty reverby. So it sounded like it wasn't the direct vocals, just like the reflections of the vocals, as well as like this kind of constant cymbal crash. Tss, tss, tss. That's mainly what was coming out of the surround backs. But the surrounds were constantly going with different accent instruments playing every once in a while, harmonies. But during the bridge, when it's that quintessential Daft Punk kind of vocoder, we're up all night to get, we're up all night to get, that was cool because those particular vocoder lyrics were only coming out of the surrounds and the surround backs and the heights. Because I stood up and I was like, oh man, those are coming out of the heights pretty loudly. So that was a cool effect. So it sounded really awesome, but I would have to say that I wish they would have done more with the surround backs. It just kind of seemed like the surround backs were an afterthought, since it was primarily just kind of reflections of instruments and vocals. So I'm going to give it an A-. Another one of Me by Diddy, The Weeknd, and French Montana. Another one where the center channel is... There's a bug. Another one where the center channel is not used. Man, very odd. You would think, since you have that capability, that the lyrics and the main vocals, lead vocals, would just come out of the center. The reverb of The Weeknd's vocals were just all over. I mean, in a good way. Just when he was singing, it just kept going around, kept going up. So that was really cool. This is like a slow R&B kind of song, but with some heavy hip hop beats underneath. So you've got some great bass extension in this song. Subwoofers were working. But honestly, it was mostly the front, left, and right speakers. There was like a little bit of keyboard, synths, piano happening in the surrounds. And then also every once in a while, there would be like some vocal shouts. Hey, woo, that kind of thing coming out of the surrounds. Surround backs, not much going on. But I will say, just leading into the chorus, there was this drum beat. I mean, honestly, it sounded straight out of Phil Collins' In the Air Tonight. I don't know if maybe they just redid it or if they actually sampled In the Air Tonight, but it's that famous drum fill of his. That was cool because every time that drum fill happened, it traveled from the front right to the surround back right. So do 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 do. So that was cool, but yeah, that was probably the extent of like actually like surround sound things that were happening besides the occasional, vocal shout. Those vocal shouts were primarily coming out of the surrounds, but also like not just the front, left, and right, but kind of up as well. So object placement was definitely being utilized with those vocal shouts because they were kind of coming all over. But yeah, just another one that was mainly in the front, left, and right. So it was just like a somewhat souped up stereo track. So I would give this one a C. Baba O'Reilly by The Who. Oh man. Honestly, I didn't expect anything less. It was fantastic. Lead vocals coming out of the center channel and only the center channel. And it's just like the raw, dry, Didn't sound like there were any effects put on his vocals at all. It was just raw coming out of the center. It was awesome. The drums sounded like they were panned to basically be 180 degrees. So there was some cymbals going on, some like tom fills going on, basically took up the entire 180. And right off the bat, when it starts with that kind of like famous keyboard riff, that was literally all around me. And it was constantly moving. You could hear it going, whoa, 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 back and forth, left, right, left, right, left, right. And about halfway through during the bridge, where a lot of the instruments kind of cut out for a minute, and then it's just the vocals and just some very minimal instrumentation going on. Those vocals were sitting up high, not just coming out of, they were coming out of the center, but also they were coming out of the heights too. So that had a really cool effect. Not a ton was going on in the surround backs, just like some cymbal crashes and like quiet keyboard as well. So it just kind of seemed like it was just to add to the effect. Nothing was actually specifically put in the surround backs. But yeah, guitars primarily coming out of the surrounds. Man, it was totally immersive. I would give this one an A+. It was that cool. It makes me want to listen to the entire album because it says this was remastered in 2022. Man, if all the songs sound like this, then I want to listen to the entire album all the way through. Dream Lover by Mariah Carey. Wow. I was not expecting this, although maybe I should have been, because it seems like all the older songs, 70s, 80s, 90s, that have been remastered, seems like all of those are done very well. They've taken the time to put the various instruments in all its various places, etc. Although one interesting tidbit is that Mariah Carey's lead vocals were not coming out of the center channel, they were coming out of the front, left, and right. But when I did put my ear up to the center channel, it was mainly the snare and the hi-hat from the drum kit. Interesting choice. I mean, I personally wouldn't have just part of the drum kit in the center. But backup vocals, harmonies, when the backup singer is going do, 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 that was come just out of the surrounds. So that was very immersive. Although walking around and putting my ear to the various speakers around here, the drums were everywhere. There were drums in the middle height. There were drums in the front height, especially during the chorus. The chorus drums were everywhere. And then the verse drums were kind of relegated more towards the front soundstage. But for whatever reason, there was a very prominent hi-hat, you know, coming out of the rear right height channel. Okay. Again, wouldn't have been my first choice, but yeah, it was because I even walked to the other rear height left just to see if that hi-hat was coming out of there too. No, just the rear height right. Like I said, the drums are literally all around you in this particular song. It was cool. It was incredibly immersive. Although I wish that her vocals would have been front and center in the center channel. Pretty good though. I would give it a B+. The Heart of Rock and Roll by Huey Lewis in the News. Again, an older song, remastered, remixed into Dolby Atmos, and it sounds great. Lead vocals coming straight out the center channel, although the reverb of the lead vocal, just like the reflections, were also coming out of the front, left, and right. But the dry lead vocal track was coming right out the center. So because the dry lead vocals were coming out of the center and the reverby reflections were coming out of the front, left, and right, it definitely gave it this sense of space, as if almost like I was listening to it live. But there's a prominent organ that plays pretty much through the entire song, and that was relegated to the surround backs. So kudos to them for using the surround backs just basically for the organ. Guitars coming out of the surrounds. Drum kit was coming out of the front soundstage. The brass section, including saxophone, mainly coming out of the right surround. In fact, the saxophone solo that happens later on in the song, just out of the surround right. Hand claps coming out of the surrounds. Very immersive, very cool. Basically, every instrument had its own little place all around me. So it was awesome. I'd give this one an A. All right, I think I'll leave it off there because going through all the songs in this playlist would take hours and hours. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do another version of this in the near future. But the big takeaway is, yes, they're not all bangers. There are some flawed tracks in the playlist, but they're all so much better than the summer of 2021 when it first became a thing. So much more improvement has been made. Much more emphasis and dedication to doing an Atmos mix has been done. Mixing a Dolby Atmos version is becoming a little bit more commonplace now, and it shows. Again, it's not perfect, but we are on an upward slope, which is good. I guess another takeaway from this is if you really want to dive into Dolby Atmos music through your home theater system, honestly, seek out the older songs. Seek out the older albums, the older artists, 70s, 80s, 90s, because it really seems like the studios involved with those particular albums or whatever really took the time to remaster them and remix them in such a way that just really takes advantage of what Dolby Atmos is all about. So yeah, like I said, I want to go back and listen to that whole album of The Who, but I mean, it makes me want to go back and listen to Mariah Carey's stuff, Huey Lewis and the News, Earth, Wind and Fire, you know, all the classics, man. So if you want to get into Dolby Atmos music through Apple Music or Tidal or Amazon Music HD or whatever, yeah, I would first try and seek out the older albums first. But overall, I am happy to say that there has been much improvement over the last 2 years. And honestly, I think it's only going to get better. So I am excited for what the future holds. Thank you for joining me on this rundown of Dolby Atmos mixes in 2023 on Apple Music. I had a lot of fun going through all these songs, picking them apart, listening to them. That's the entire reason I even did this video, because just curiosity. Well, things must have improved since 2021, right? And yes, they definitely have. So now it's your turn. Are you still on the fence about Dolby Atmos music? Are you still a little unsure about the whole situation? Like all Dolby Atmos mixes are still crap? Well, hopefully this lets you know that they aren't all crap and that they are pretty cool. If you have been listening to Dolby Atmos music, what do you recommend? What mixes have you heard that just blew you away? Because I want to know. Let's start a conversation, people. As always, please be kind to each other out there. Don't just listen to music. Maybe hop on that bandwagon and start listening to it in Dolby Atmos. And of course, always be listening.